system. Okay, so let's go ahead here. So first thing, make sure that you do have what we call the Black app installed on your mobile phone and your iPad as well. This app, you just search for Climate Field View in the Google Play Store or the iTunes App Store, and you can find it and install it. It is available on both platforms, so regardless of whether you are running an Android or an iPhone, you should be able to do it. Get it installed. This is going to be the way that you're going to be looking at a lot of maps and doing a lot of things related to yield analysis this year, and it's really helpful to have it on your phone. Since we always have our phones with us, we don't always have the iPad with us wherever we go, but we almost always have our phone with us, and this gives us access to our data from anywhere. That said, what's the point of these field health images? What's the purpose that why are we providing them to you? Well, it's hard to understand what's really happening inside your field, especially as we get later in the season and the corn grows up and now it's 6 feet tall, 8 feet tall, 10 feet tall, and we happen to be driving around our operation and it might look like this from the edge of the road. But these are big fields. It might be a 40-acre field. It might be an 80-acre field. It might be a 120-acre field. And what's happening in the middle is very difficult to determine as the season goes along. There may be a big area in there where we have disease problems, or we may have had a hail event that has knocked out quite a few acres in the middle of the field. And what's happening is very difficult, if not impossible, to understand from doing windshield scouting and driving by the edges of our field. We may, again, have various disease problems cropping up in the field. We may have pest issues that are cropping up and affecting large areas of the field. We may have nutrient deficiencies and things that are happening that are going to affect the yield that we see in various portions of that field at the end of the season. And if we are to use our traditional methods of scouting, like let's say we have this 80-acre field and we do a pretty good job of scouting. We go out in the heat of July and it's hot and it's humid and we walk this course that is mapped here on this field. I mean, that's a pretty good job of scouting when the corn is tall and it's hot out there. You're putting some effort in there. But when the corn is that tall and you walk this course in an 80-acre field, you're going to see less than 2% of the crop. So it's not at all a very efficient way of going about scouting. If we just go out and walk in our fields randomly, trying to hope that we find that needle in a haystack and see the most important problems that are occurring on our farm, it's just not the best use of our time. So how can we do it better? Well, thankfully, we have sensors in the field. We plant 30 to 35,000, 36,000 of them every season in all of our cornfields, and they are the plants themselves. Those plants give off signals that if we look at that field from above and take a picture and process it into what's called an NDVI image, a normalized difference vegetative index, we can see the density of the biomass that's out there in the field, and we can see where we're having problems in the field without having to go and wander across those fields ourselves. So let's take advantage of these sensors that we're putting out in the field and are giving off signals by looking at those signals from the comfort of our truck, from the comfort of our home, rather than wandering around fields when it's hot and humid and fighting our way through densely populated cornfields. We can do this a whole lot more efficiently and a whole lot easier, and field health images are really the key to doing that. So what are the questions that we're helping answer with the field health images? Well, number one is priority. Which of those fields should we be focused on? Rather than, when it comes time to scout, wandering around our fields randomly and hoping that we find the problems that exist in our fields, this is going to really help us prioritize, because we're going to be able to see immediately which fields have potential problems and which fields we don't need to scout at all, because everything is looking good in those fields in the images that are being taken from above. Secondly, it's going to help us focus. So once we know the field that has a problem, or we can see that, where in the field do we go? Again, it might be an 80-acre field, it might be a 160-acre field. Let's not walk the whole thing. Let's not look at the entire field when we don't have to. Let's just go immediately to those parts of the field where we know there are problems and improve the efficiency of the time that we're spending out there in the field. And third, let's interpret what's happening. Now, this is an area of ongoing research for the Climate Corporation. We can certainly show you where there are problems in the field. And what we're working on for the next generation of these products is being able to help you understand what is happening before you even set foot in the field. So a lot of ongoing research here, and there's not a whole lot that we can do with this today in terms of being able to tell you, hey, there's a problem in the northeast corner of this field and it's spider mites, or it's a problem in the northeast corner of the field and it's water damage, or it's a nutrient deficiency. But we're doing a lot of research on there, and we hope to have a lot of new things coming your way in that area in the future here. So let's next talk about field health availability. So where can you get these images? Well, let me talk about Canada first, because Canada is a little bit easier. If you are a paid Climate Field View client, then you have field health images in your area. Basically, in Canada, we don't sell the climate product anywhere where we can't provide imagery. So if you're Canadian and you have paid for a Climate Field View subscription, then you are going to be receiving images in your Climate Field View account on all of your fields this season. Now, if you're in the U.S., it's a little bit different. Basically, the way to interpret this map is as long as you are not in one of those kind of orangey areas, the orangey areas in western United States through California, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico. There's a little bit over there in, let me see if I can get my states right, Virginia and West Virginia. The orange counties are the only ones where you will not receive field health imagery. If you are in any other part of the United States where it's not orange, you're going to get field health imagery. And just actually one update there on the Canadian part of things. One of my colleagues just mentioned to me an update. We do sell field view in some of the maritime provinces in Canada, and those are areas where we don't have field health imagery available. So one correction there on the Canadian side of things. If you're in the maritime provinces, you may not be getting these images. Talk to your dealer just to confirm if that is or is not part of the package that you're going to be receiving. So just wanted to clear that up in terms of where, we're talking about field health images. These come with almost all of the climate packages that we sell around North America today, but there are a couple of spots where you may not receive field health images, so wanted to make sure people were aware of that. So before I get into the product, let me just talk about a couple of the benefits of field health imagery. So number one, you're going to get unlimited acres of images with all Climate Field View paid subscriptions. So there's a lot of services out there that provide imagery where you can get someone to fly your fields with a drone or with a fixed wing aircraft or something like that. And a lot of those services you pay on the per acre basis. You want this field flown, fine, we'll fly it and you'll get billed for that particular field. And if you want it flown again, you're going to get billed again for that field, whatever the case might be. With Climate Field View, when you pay for a subscription, you get access to images on as many acres as you want to put in your account. So whether you farm 500 acres or 50,000 acres, you're going to get images for all of those acres throughout the entire season, as many as we can collect, just delivered to you on demand as they're taken. So things are happening. You're getting quite a few images, and from a value standpoint, there's a lot of value provided through these season-long images in the FieldView platform. Secondly, the images are delivered in near real time. And this is important because if you're going to get field health images taken of your field and someone flies it and then they deliver those images 10 days or 2 weeks later, well, a lot has changed in your fields over the course of that time. And so it's important that the image is taken and you can see it in near real time, so it's a representation of what's really happening in your field now versus what was happening in your field 2 weeks ago when you were 1 or 2 growth stages earlier. So we take these images, or the images are taken by satellite, and we provide them to you usually within about 48 hours of the time they're taken. So we'll see some examples of that, but it's another important feature when we're talking about imagery, that you can see it in near real time. And then the third thing that we, through our platform, that you have the advantage of is the images can be used with your mobile device in the field to find specific problem areas. So these are not images that are delivered to you via, your computer, that sit on the desktop computer, or that you print out and you have a hard copy that you take in the truck with you, and then you drive to the field and you try and figure out where that problem is. You can look at these images on your phone as you're walking in the field, and you can use your location services on your phone to virtually walk across that map and make sure that you're standing in the problem area before you start looking around. And I'll show you a little bit more about how this works as well in the demonstration. And there's a couple interesting things that come out of these field health maps. These field health maps end up being a preview of your yield maps in most situations. So here's an example on the screen from a farmer in Illinois saying, you know, what we saw in those maps from field view really correlated to yield this year. It was a breakthrough moment for me. Because as you can see here on the left-hand side of the screen, that's the map that he got from us on June 27th. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, there is his yield map of what he actually harvested in the field from his combine. And as you can see, there's a really high correlation there. And we see that over and over again, that you can look at the images that are coming through in late June and early July, and very frequently they are going to be a preview of your yield map. And there's a lot of things that you can do with that, especially when it comes to late season fertility that you might be putting on, planning for grain sales, things like that. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the product here as well. Here's another example from one of our farmers in Canada, just going over satellite imagery from Field View Canada on some fields. It's amazing how close the imagery is in July to all the yield maps. This will be good to help make some fungicide decisions this year. So again, a lot of things that these images can drive in making the decisions of what we're going to put on those fields. We can look at an image in June or July and make some decisions about what we're going to do, where we're going to do it, and how much of these kind of in-season products we're going to use. So we can optimize the spend that we have on the farm. So that said, let me cover one more thing. So how do you get these images, and how do you know that they're there? Well, if you are a paid Climate Field View subscriber and you have access to images, you've probably started getting these emails from us. And I wanted to talk about them because they're an important part of your daily routine in using these most effectively. So you should get field health map notifications via email. They'll look something like this. You've received new field health maps will be the title of the email. And then it will show the maps that you received that day. And the idea here is that, you know, here it says the following fields had new maps arrive on May 30th, 2018. And it'll give me a list of all the fields that had new maps, and it'll show me little thumbnails of those maps that were received. Now, this is important to, it's important to look at these emails that come in each day, because this is that timely factor. The image gets taken from above, and we're going to send it to you within about 48 hours, because you can see here that these maps arrived on May 30th, but if you look at the text of the email, the image date was May 28th. So the image was taken on May 28th, and we sent it to you as an email on May 30th and put it in your account on May 30th. So I think what the best practice is in terms of daily process is look at these emails when they come in every morning. Scan through them and look at the thumbnail images. You know your fields, and you know the areas where if it's been a dry year, you're going to start seeing poor product performance, or if it's been a wet year where you're going to have some drowned out areas. And you should know in general where the good and the bad parts of those fields are going to be. And as long as what you're seeing in the thumbnail here that you get via the email matches up with your expectation, there's nothing else to do there. You've reviewed the map, it's showing, it's not giving you any surprises essentially, and so you can go on about your day. But what you would want to do is if you looked at these maps and you saw that there was an area of poor product performance in a part of the field where you didn't expect it, where you say, hey, I farmed this field for the last 10 years and I've never had a problem there in that part of the field. Why are these maps showing a potential problem in terms of biomass there? That's where you start digging in more. So I would say that in 95% of the cases, you're going to get these emails, you're going to look at the maps, and it's going to be what you expect. Things are going to be happening out in the field that are going according to plan or according to what you would expect based on the weather conditions that you've had that year. But it's going to be those cases where you scan through this and you see something unusual. That's where you're going to dig in more. That's where you're going to go to that field. That's where you're going to take your phone out, walk into that field, or get someone to do it for you, walk to that spot, find it, look around, see what's happening, why is that part of the field performing worse this year, and then make some decisions about is there something we should be doing to mitigate this situation, make it better, and improve our final yield at the end of the year. So do pay close attention to these emails that come in. I would definitely recommend opening them every morning, scanning through the map, seeing if you see anything unusual, and using that as a basis to whether or not to go out and scout the fields in person. Okay, that said, let me go ahead and let's do a product demo here. Let's actually switch over to the actual product itself. Let me see if I can do this. Stop sharing there. And I'm going to try and share my iPad now. So let me, and again, any questions about anything, please type those into the chat or the question and answer functionality, and I will make sure I get to those questions here as we go. Okay, so you should be able to see my iPad on your screen now. And where I'm logged into is I'm logged into the Climate Field View Black app that we discussed before. And let me just go back a step so you can see it. What I'm logged into is it's at the bottom of my screen on the right-hand corner. I got a black background that says Climate with an orange F on it. That is the app where you will probably be doing most of your work with these field health images. They do appear in the CAB app, but the CAB app is something that only works on an iPad, whereas this Climate Field View app works on both Android and iPhone mobile phones. So you should be able to always carry this black app with you, where the CAB app is a little bit more cumbersome because it's only iPad. CAB app also is really meant for data collection. It's not really meant for the data analysis kind of things that we do in the black app. So the black app has a little bit more functionality when it comes to viewing these images and using them effectively in the field. So I would highly recommend you install the black app and you use it for all of your field health and data analysis work. So let me click on the black app, and what it does is it takes me to my overview page where it's going to show me, hey, this is all the different stuff I can tell you about. Now, before I get into field health, I do want to show you one thing that's really important to do if you are using an iPhone or if you're on an iPad, anything with the Apple operating system. So if you have your phone or your app in front of you, please feel free to follow along with me here. But I'm going to click on Fields on the bottom of the page, and the same thing if you're on your phone. You can click on Fields to get to your field list. And then I'm going to click on any field on the left-hand side of the page here, if you're on a phone, just click on any one of your fields. Now, upper right-hand corner, there's those three little dots. And this is only something you need to do if you're on an Apple operating system. But inside of those three little dots, there's three options that say Show Pin Notes, Show Region Notes, and Show Current Location. When you install our app by default on an Apple system, the Show Region Notes and Show Current Location options are off. You're going to want to turn those on. Most importantly, you definitely want to make sure you have that Show Current Location on, but I would turn all three of them on. If you do not turn on that Show Current Location, you are not going to be able to see your blue location dot in the field as you walk across it, and so it makes it a lot harder to use these field health maps, because if I'm walking across the field trying to navigate to one of the areas that shows low biomass in my field health image, I'm not going to know when I get there, because my little blue location dot won't be flashing on top of that map, so I can't see myself walk across the map, and I won't know where I am geographically in that field. So make sure you turn these options on to use your field health maps most effectively. Okay, that said, let me go back to the overview here, and let's talk about field health and how we use it. Well, so whether you're on the iPhone, the Android phone, or an iPad, this app looks the same. You've got these 6 tabs, and so you just have to navigate to the field health tab. And when you navigate to the field health tab, I'm going to hit View More. And let's talk about what the screen shows. So basically, there are a few different options here on the screen. Let me work through it kind of from right to left on top of the screen. So the first thing I can do when I'm on the screen is I can say in the crop types, what do I want to see? Do I want to just look at my barley fields today? Do I want to just look at my corn fields today, my soybean fields? You can, if you have a lot of fields, this is one way you can limit your view by saying, hey, I'm only scouting corn fields today. Let me help me zoom in on those fields only, and I can change my selector to say, hey, let's just look at the corn fields, or let's just look at the soybean field. So you can go ahead and choose those options in the upper right-hand corner to limit your view. Secondly, there are some ways you can sort the images either from your newest images to your name to one of the options here is low biomass. let me talk about that in a minute once I actually talk about what these images are. So the other thing that we have to choose here is at the top of the screen we have scouting and we have vegetation images. And let me start with vegetation. So when you come to this page, you're going to be able to look at these images, and what we see here is we're going to see the most recent image collected for all of our fields. So this is a good dashboard to say, okay, hey, maybe I haven't been paying attention to those emails that have been coming in every day. I just want to see the most recent image for all of my fields to see if there's anything that I need to go scout because we've got some unusual patterns in those fields. And this page, as you can see right now, is not very interesting. On these vegetation maps, anytime you see brown or gray colors, that means that we're looking at pretty much bare dirt in the field. We have to start getting into the yellows and the greens before we are actually looking at biomass in the field. So this just has to do with what stage of the year we're at. A lot of the crops, they've been planted, but we don't have the crop isn't canopied over yet, the rows aren't closed, and so we're still seeing a lot of dirt in the images, and so we're not really getting any biomass signals yet. That will quickly change here in the coming weeks as the crop grows in the field. So when I look at these vegetation maps, I can see that, yeah, basically nothing has emerged, or if it's emerged, it's still quite small in the filer field and in the tackle field and in gray east. But I can see Muncie North here, that Muncie North 476, where it's mostly yellow. That's a field where I've got some biomass in, and I'm starting to see a signal that's going to help me make some decisions through the season. So I can look through this and I can very quickly see which of my fields have crop that has come up and which of my fields do not. I've got H4 down here that actually has some pretty good biomass. Now, what do the colors mean? Well, on these vegetation images, there's an absolute scale where the darker green it is, the more biomass there is, and you can compare it from field to field. So this H4, because it's so dark green, I know is much further along than this Muncie North field where I've got kind of this pale yellow or yellow to pale green color in it. The darker the green, the further that crop is along and the more biomass we have out there, and it is comparable from field to field. So be able to, as you look at this, the darker green, you can understand that from field to field how far along each one is. Let's talk about a couple other things with these. Well, actually, let me go ahead and we'll talk about scouting in comparison. So vegetation is an absolute color scale. The darker the green is, the more biomass there is in the field. Now let's look at the scouting maps and how that's different. If I click over to scouting, you're going to see that every one of my scouting maps has some areas that are dark green and some areas that are red. And this is even though we just looked at the vegetation maps, which showed that basically no vegetation is being picked up in most of these fields. So what's happening here? Well, these scouting maps are maps that we take the image, and even if there's not a whole lot of differentiation in that field, it's fairly similar. We're going to, essentially like an old tube TV, we're going to turn up the contrast, and we're going to force differences so that we can show you that, hey, even though this field is fairly similar, if you want to zoom in and find the best and the worst parts of the field in terms of biomass, we're gonna increase that scale there and show them to you so you can see them and find them fairly easily. Now, sometimes this causes a false signal, like on the fields here where most of these we're looking at bare dirt. What we've done is we've turned up the contrast on that bare dirt color and said, hey, some of these areas have a little bit more what looks like biomass, and some of them have a little bit of less of what looks like biomass, and so we're going to point that out to you. But really, it's a fairly false signal at this point in the season. There's not any biomass out there to measure, and so when red versus green, it doesn't really matter. It's still all the same. We're just actually seeing differences in the reflectivity of the dirt, which are probably showing us areas of organic matter in that field where it's higher and lower. So it's a little bit different at this point in the season. But if we were to look at that Muncie North field, now remember that Muncie North field had emerged. We got biomass growing out there because we had a green, kind of a pale green signal coming off of most of the field in the vegetative map. Now here in the scouting map, we've taken and we've blown up that scale and we've said, okay, even though it looks fairly similar across that whole field in the vegetation map, what if I want to go out there and scout and I want to see where my highest and lowest biomass are? Well, I can click on this field and I can look at this image from May 27th and I can say, okay, I do have some differentiation here. And if I want to look at the best biomass in this field, the highest growth, Well, it's here. If I drop a pin, it's right there. It's sort of the highest area in the field. And I could walk myself out there. I could walk into basically, because I've got my location services turned on, I could park my truck along the side of the road. I could start walking into that field, and I would see my blue location dot moving with me as I walked across this field and looking at my phone. And once I saw my blue location dot stop on top of that darkest green area, I could look around, I could take a note, take a picture, save it to my account so that everyone else could see it and understand what's going on out in that part of the field. Then I could walk over to one of these red areas and do the same thing. So you can go ahead and use these images to find those spots of the field which have the best and the worst biomass, and take notes to send someone out there, do scouting, whatever it is that you might want to do there. So that's how these vegetation or these scouting maps work. We take the vegetation map and we increase the contrast to differentiate even between areas that are fairly similar. Okay, so that leads to some of this sorting here at the top of the page. So what can we sort by? One of the things that we can sort by is we can sort by newest to see, what's our newest images, and that's often a way you're going to want to look at this is say, hey, I'm out in the field right now. Let's go ahead and look at my newest image for all my fields and see if there's any fields that have anything interesting going on, any interesting patterns that don't make sense to me that I need to look at. Another way you might want to sort is by low biomass. And if I sort by low biomass, and again, it doesn't make a lot of sense here at this point in the season because right now we're not even really seeing biomass. We're mostly seeing organic matter in the soil with these images. But when I look at this, when I sort by low biomass, what's it going to do is it's going to take the most recent image for all my fields, and it's going to bring to the top the ones that have the largest areas of red, essentially, in this field, the largest areas of the field that are below average in biomass, below field average in biomass. So you can see here it moved to the top, Gravel Road North, because that one has 25% low. There's a little note in the lower right-hand corner of the box that says that's a 25% low. Then Muncie North has 15% low. Then Prairie North has 10% low. Essentially, as you go through the season, what we're going to do is we're going to call out for you the fields that have the largest areas of biomass that are significantly lower than the average in that field, so that we can help you identify those fields where you've got the biggest problem as the season goes along. Because presumably, if you've got the option to go look at a field where there's a 2-acre problem or a field where there's an 80-acre problem, you want to know about the 80-acre problem first. And we're going to help float those to the top by allowing you to come to this page and sorting by low biomass. So that's something you're going to probably want to try during the season once we get row closure out there and we've got the crop up in the field. Come to this green every once in a while, probably at least once a week, sort by low biomass, and see if there are fields out there that are having large problem areas that maybe you weren't aware of that you want to go ahead and take a look at. Okay, what else comes with these images? Well, let me go back to that Muncie North one. So a couple things come with these images. Like this one on the left-hand side of the page. It says it's a May 27th, 2018 image. And every time we give you an image, we're going to give you 3 metrics. Well, it depends. If it's a cornfield, we're going to give you 3 metrics. If it's not a cornfield, you'll get 2. So number 1, you'll get year-to-date rainfall. That'll be the amount of rain this field has had since planting, if you've got a planting date in it. I don't have a planting date on this field, so when there is no planting date, it's going to give you the total precipitation that has fallen on that field since January 1st. But as long as you've got a planting date in there, it'll give you your season to date since planting rainfall total, so you have some context on what you're seeing in that field and compare it to some of the other fields and how much rain they've received. Secondly, you'll have that % low biomass number that we talked about. And then third, if it's a cornfield, we're going to give you the GDUs since planting. How many growing degree day units have occurred in that field since the planting date? So a couple different options or things that will appear there to help give you some context for what it is you're seeing in this image before you go out to the field. I know a lot of you end up sharing your climate accounts with your agronomist or with your seed salesman or your retailer or whoever it is. And they may not have planted the field, so this gives them some context that, hey, when they're looking at these images, how far along is this crop? How many growing degree day units has it had? What kind of water has it had via rainfall? Help give them some context for what it is that they're seeing in this image and understand some of the details there. So that is available there as well. Okay, let me talk a little bit about what some of these images look a little bit weird, and I'm going to explain why that is. So, like here I'm looking at this vegetation page, and on the 3 east field and the 3 west field, I've got little things that are taken out of the field, and Swanson has a big chunk taken out of the middle. What are these? Well, these are cloud issues, or where we think cloud issues are. Clouds can cause a lot of problems in field health images where they'll cause false signals to appear, where if there's a cloud over the field, it'll all of a sudden make it look like there is a biomass problem in that part of the field, when in fact it's really just that a cloud got in the way or a cloud shadow got in the way. And so we help you with this kind of stuff by allowing you to we try and cut those clouds out where we know about them using an automated cloud detection algorithm, and it works pretty well, but there's some times that it's going to give some false positives as well. So I want to go through how that works. So let's look at this 3 east field, for example. If I click on 3 east, and this most recent image from May 28th, you're going to see that we've cut out 3 sections of it. Why did we cut them out? Well, our detection algorithm said that there might be clouds in that area that's causing a false signal in that part of the field. How do I know? Well, we can look at, there's a button called True Color on all these images that allows you to see the actual satellite image that was taken on that day and see if there was in fact a cloud there. So if I click on True Color here, you're going to see that here's the image that was taken of the field on that day. And really there's not any cloud issues there. What the problem is here is those areas of the field have a little bit more white reflectance and it looks like a cloud, and the reason is it's bare dirt. And I think what's happening out there is you might have even a little bit of ponding water in the field there, and we're seeing that reflectance, and it's confusing our cloud detection algorithm and causing it to think that, hey, I've got a little bit of this kind of white reflectance coming off the field. It might be a cloud, and I'm going to cut it out. So this is something you might see, especially here at the start of the season when we've got a lot of bare dirt. You might see a lot of these false positives where it's cutting parts of the field out because of the reflected signal coming off the field that mimics something like a cloud. Let me show you what it looks like, though, for a real cloud issue. So if I go to, for example, Fisk North here, we had an image here taken on May 6th this year that had various parts of the image cut out, and you can see it here. Here, if I click True Color, you're going to see that, okay, there was, in fact, a cloud over that part of the field, and there was a cloud shadow over a part of the field, and that's why we cut that part of the field out, because we know that that will cause some false signals in the images, the field health images, and so we're going to cut it out and be able to still serve you, give you the parts of the field where the signal is good. So even though the western half of this field, we can't give you a good picture of what's happening there because the clouds were interfering, the eastern half of the field is good. So we're going to give it to you so that you can hopefully make some use of that part of the field rather than throwing the image away altogether. And this is really one of the big advances that we have and advantages that we have over a lot of the other providers in the market today is we have some very sophisticated cloud detection algorithms that allow us to provide you with even partial images where other companies will either send you the whole flawed image and cause you to have some misinterpretation of what's happening in the field, or not send you the image at all because the clouds are obscuring part of it. So we can provide you with a lot more images as a result. One of the other things I should talk about here, and you can kind of see it on the left-hand side of the screen, is image frequency. How frequently are you going to get these images through the season? Well, we don't really have any control over that. We don't own these satellites, but we contract with a number of different companies that provide satellite images. And what we're going to do is we're just going to send you images anytime we get one that is not almost totally obscured by clouds. We're going to give you what we can. So we hope that we'll get you images at least once a week, once every 10 days or so, but if you go through an extended cloudy period, that might be, you might not get an image for 3 weeks, you might not get an image for 2 weeks. And as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen this year, like this particular field, and I'm not actually sure exactly where it is geographically, it's somewhere in the States, it got an image on April 19th, then 10 days later on April 29th, then 7 days later on May 6th, 10 days later on May 16th, 7 days later on May 23rd, 1 day later on May 24th, 1 day later on May 25th. You can see that it is pretty variable. You might get images multiple days in a row. You might go 2 weeks between images. It's unfortunately something that we don't have a whole lot of control over. Mother Nature and where clouds appear is going to really be the driver of that. But you shouldn't go, ideally don't go more than 2 or 2.5 weeks without an image. Though again, clouds can play a factor there. And at this point in the season, almost everyone should have gotten images for all of their fields. if you have fields at this point in the season that have not received a single image, that'd be probably a good reason to contact our support team at 888-924-7475. You can look at our help number and call them. Let them know and see if they can see if there's something going on that's causing your images not to appear. But at this point in the season, we've been sending them since about April 15th. You should have multiple images for all of your fields at this point of the season, as you can see in this case. And if you don't, it's probably worth calling support to check in and see if they have any feedback for you there. Images will continue until October 15th, so they'll go through the vast majority of the growing season. And the image resolution on these images is about 5 meters per pixel. So that's about the image resolution that you're going to get through most of the images this season. In the past, we have had images that went up to 20-meter resolution, but we've realized that those are not actually all that helpful in finding and determining what to do in the field and some of these problem spots. So what we've done this year is we've scaled everything back, and we're going to only be providing images on the 5-meter resolution scale. Okay, so that is a lot, I think, of how to use these field health images. Basically, you're going to have scouting and vegetation options. The scouting is really the one that's going to blow up that contrast and allow you to find the parts in the field where something interesting is happening and look at it in a little more detail. The vegetation is your absolute scale where you can see biomass and compare from field to field. There is one more thing I want to show you guys that is it's related to these images, but really how you can use them in season. We saw that tweet from someone who said that, hey, this image is going to be really helpful for me this year in figuring out where to place fungicide. Or maybe you're doing late season nitrogen and you want to be able to do a variable rate script and put the nitrogen down in the places where the crop needs it and not be wasting nitrogen in areas where, hey, the crop is not doing so well and I don't think it can recover. These images can be used in conjunction with scripting, and basically if you have access to Imagery, then you have access to our manual scripting tools as well. And so let me show you how this might work. So I'm in the mobile app here, and I'm going to go ahead and click prescriptions at the bottom of the page. Now, the scripts are not something you can do from a mobile phone, but you can do it from the iPad. So if you're on an iPad or you're in the web, you can use this scripting feature. But I'm going to click on prescriptions. And I'm going to say I want to do a new script here, fertility script. So I'm on the fertility scripting at the top. I can either do fertility or planting. But I want to do a fertility script, and I'm going to pick a field here that I have an example kind of set up for. I'm going to do a Jefferson Center field fertility script, and I'm going to hit Create New here. And what I want to show you here, this takes just a second while it pulls up all the information for this field. But basically, as the season goes along, since we have seen in some of the previous examples that these in-season images are a preview of our yield map, we can use these to create variable rate scripts for some of the late season applications we're going to do in our field, so we're not wasting product in part of the field that we know we're not going to have a whole lot of yield. So I say I want to do a fertility script. That's going to be an in-season script. I pick a date. It doesn't really matter what I say there. I pick a type. I say, you know, this is a nitrogen script. I'm going to be doing some late season N. I'm going to be putting on what type of fertilizer. I can search through the database of all of our fertilizer types and say, hey, I'm putting 28 down. It'll find my 28 mix there. My incorporation method is going to be broadcast and not incorporated. I can choose whether or not my nitrogen is going to have a stabilizer in it. I'm going to say I don't here. And I'm going to say Finish in Editor. Now what happens here is it brings up a map of the field. And what I can do is I can pull up as that map any of the maps that exist in my climate system. And one of the maps that exists is my, my field health imagery. Now, I don't have a whole lot of good field health imagery for 2018 yet, so I'm going to go back to a previous year. But I say in the lower right-hand corner here, I can say Set Your Map View. I'm going to choose which map I want to use to display here. And I'm going to say I want to look at more maps. I want to look at my in-season maps. I want to look at my, my scouting map. Or actually, let me look at my vegetation map. I'm going to pick a previous year. And let's take this July 30th image. So now I've got on my screen the in-season satellite image that was taken from this field on July 30th or whatever date this is. I think, yeah, July 30th of 2015. But imagine that I'm in 2018. I'm in the middle of 2018, and I'm making a decision now about where I want to do some late season N or some fungicide application or whatever the case might be. We can use these scripting tools to very easily create some variable rate scripts that we can then push to the sprayer and execute in the field. So I could say, okay, well, this is, I can now see the size of the areas where I have water damage and I've lost crop, and I know no need to waste things there. So I can come in here and say, let's draw in the top right-hand corner of the screen a polygon, and I can start making zones on this. I can say, you know what, let's not spray over here, and I draw a zone and hit done. And let's not spray or over here, and I hit another polygon. And, this is another part of the field that I'm not going to waste chemical on. So I can close that one, done, and draw another zone. And maybe I even say, there's a part of the area that's doing really well that I want to put more nitrogen on. I want to increase my side dressing rate here because I think we have the opportunity to really push the crop here since we've got such good biomass there. And so I can draw a polygon and say, you know what, this part of the field really looks like it's performing well. So I want to, and I'm just tapping with my finger here on the iPad to trace an area that I decide is a part of the field that I want to increase my side dressing on, and I create a zone there. You can very quickly and easy just use your finger to tap and create zones in the field. Now that I've got those zones created, I can go up here and say, okay, well, zone 1, this is the majority of the field. That's the part of the field, and I could have made this more complicated, but for the sake of time, I'm going to leave just these 4 zones. So on the main part of the field, I say, you know what, I'm going to put on, how many pounds of N do I want there? I'm going to put on 80 units of N there. And then in zone 2, which is this bad part in the upper right-hand corner, you know what, I'm putting a 0 right there. That part of the field I know is dead, and I'm not putting down any nitrogen there. Zone 3, which is this other dead part, I'm also putting down 0. There's no crop growing there. Zone 4 is the good one. That's where I've got a lot of yield potential. I want to bump my rate to 120 units of N there. And as you can see on the right-hand corner of the screen, right-hand side of that, where I'm putting in the 80, it'll tell me the number of gallons I'm going to need to achieve that, given that I am using 28% here. So I can see that at the bottom of the page. It'll say my average rate is 84 pounds per acre. My average product rate is 28 gallons. And I'm going to need 1,448 gallons of product to execute this script. But just like this, in a couple of minutes here, I have used this field health image to generate a variable rate fertility script for this field. I can just go ahead and click save. It will save that script, and I can then go ahead and either export, connect it to my John Deere, and send directly to my John Deere. It'll sync to my FieldView tab, but what I'll probably need to do is actually go to a computer where I can download this script to a thumb drive that I can then take to the sprayer, plug into the monitor, and execute. So a lot of the scripts, they do kind of need to end up going through a computer so you can get it to that thumb drive so you can execute it when we're talking about some of these as applied scripts. And when you go to a computer, it's going to give you the option to download the script as a John Deere 2630 file, or as a Pro 700 file, or as a Trimble file, or as a Raven file. It'll allow you to export the script in the format to match whatever your monitor is in the sprayer. So a lot of different options there. I want to show you how that works, how you can use these field health images to make scripts in season to basically be putting product in the right place and optimizing some of your late season applications. Okay. That said, I think I'm largely done talking about field health images here and how you can use them. There's obviously a lot of other ways that you're going to find value in these through the course of the season, but let me go ahead and a couple of questions have been submitted. Let me answer those.